Welcome back to our Ask, Seek, Knock series. And friends, today we have a very sensitive, very adult theme topic. So I want to respectfully ask if there are any children present, parents with your best discernment. I would recommend maybe having them step outside or just skipping this particular one because we're going to deal with some adult themes. And it's a very good question, but it is a bit weighty. So that being said, let's get into today's topic. So the question is, Deuteronomy 22, verses 28 to 29. It sounds like God is victimizing the victim. Why is the man supposed to marry a woman who is raped? And how is that fair to the woman? My goodness, this is such an important question. It's such a heavy question. To answer this question, we need to give a little bit of context. So in Deuteronomy 22, verses 25 to 27 says, if a man meets an engaged woman out in the country and he rapes her, only the man must die. Do nothing to the young woman, for she has committed no crime worthy of death. She is as innocent as a murdered victim. Since the man raped her out in the country, it must be assumed that she screamed and there was no one to rescue her. So that prefacing our verse that we're about to talk about, right there, the Bible assumes the innocence of the woman, right? A woman's engaged, a man does a terrible thing, and the man must die. That might sound, okay, that makes sense. But here's where it gets tricky. Verses 28 and 29 says, suppose a man has intercourse with a young woman who is a virgin, but is not engaged to be married. If they are discovered, the man must pay her father 50 pieces of silver. Then the man must marry the woman because he has violated her, and he may never divorce her as long as she lives. So there's the question. Okay, if the woman is a victim, if a man, rapes her, why does a man get to marry her? Well, that's an excellent question. So now let's zoom out. Okay, so around the time this was written, right, 1300 BC, give or take a couple hundred years, during the time of Moses, the nations all around them, the Hittites, the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Jebusites, all the different ites, they were awful. They were awful to slaves, especially women, and there was so much sin that surrounded the way women were treated. And that is not God's heart. That is not the heart of our God. But then we see this verse. So, okay, well, if that's not the heart of Yahweh, all the other nations are evil to women. Why does God have this in there? Well, that's actually part of the beauty of this passage. It actually protects women. So in Jewish culture, especially at this time, a man was not at all supposed to, never ever allowed in scripture to molest or rape a woman. However, if he does, one, he has to pay a dowry, which is pretty common. However, he has to marry her. Well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, why would God have a man who did a terrible thing marry the woman? In Jewish culture, if a woman had her virginity taken away, again, oftentimes a virgin was very much a highlighted, respected thing. And in the shame culture, if you weren't a virgin, then you would absolutely be disgraced amongst your people. And so oftentimes, if a woman wasn't a virgin, one, nobody would marry her. Two, she couldn't get a job anywhere. And three, she probably had to become a prostitute because her virginity was taken. It was such a sacred thing, and it still is sacred. In the Jewish community, if a girl was no longer a virgin, well, she was basically good for one thing, to be a prostitute. So then God makes this rule to Israel. God says, if a man does a terrible thing to her, he has to marry her. Well, why is that fair? This is why. When a man marries a woman, not only does she become, gets his last name, and part of her shame becomes his, and his honor or shame becomes hers, but by Jewish law, a man had to provide and protect his wife. Not only did he have to protect her, but if the man died, and oftentimes the men died before the women, all that was his would then go to her and her children. So by commanding the man has to marry her, God is providing a safety net for this woman who has been so mistreated. And for the rest of his life, he has to provide for her. All of his glory and honor is now shared with hers. And on top of that, he can never divorce her. He can never leave her. He has to provide for her. And the whole community would know this man did a terrible thing, and he will, by the peer pressure of the community, will provide for her and take care for her. The man was the one shamed here. The man would live with that disgrace, not the woman. So although it seems very unfair, God actually made this rule to protect the woman who has been mistreated. And I love how the Bible continually lifts up and elevates the woman, especially in a culture that did not at all. So how was that fair? By mandatory marriage to the man, God is protecting this woman who has been violated. And the shame of the man is known by the entire community, and he has to provide for her forever until he dies. It actually brings safety and stability to this woman. Thank you guys so much for joining us on our Ask, Seek, Knock series, and we'll see you in the next video.